Yes, indeed. Thank you so much, Professor Ivelaw Lloyd Griffith, for joining me for this little chat. Um,
Thank you for inviting me.
you're so welcome. It's truly an honor. I mean, uh, you have so much behind you. I mean, you're an expert at the Center for Strategic and International Studies, a fellow with the Caribbean Policy Consortium. I mean, you're a specialist on Caribbean security. You've published several books. Yeah, so thank you. I'm honored. So, first of all, um, I want to confirm that you're originally from Guyana, yes?
And,
Yes, indeed. So
and
that
the
means,
many waters.
indeed, yes. So that means this is more than a political issue for you. I mean, it's also personal, I would
Oh,
think,
yes, very
right?
much so. Very
Yes.
much.
So, can you sort of give our readers sort of a background around the issue? I mean, how did it start?
This issue dates to the colonial period of now Guyana,
Mm,
and it has an antecedent in the colonial period of Venezuela. Guyana became part of the British colonial possession sphere
mm,
when they were able to succeed the Dutch, who had major occupancy of what is now Guyana.
mm,
But what the British and the Dutch failed to do in 1814 was to clearly demarcate the boundary between Guyana and British Guyana
mm,
and Venezuela. So later on in the 1840s, Britain hired a German explorer,
yeah.
Robert Schomburg. And they said to Schomburg, go back to this South American place and tell us where the boundaries should exist.
Mm,
He did that study and he came up with what was known subsequently as the Schomburg Line.
right.
The British accepted the Schomburg Line as a demarcation. Venezuelans did not.
Hmm,
They're arguing that everything that Spain had ever owned in South America
hmm,
at the time when Spain renounced its ownership of what it was then Gran Colombia, New Granada,
yeah.
belonged to Venezuela.
Oh.
British objected. British said no. Keep in mind that around that same period, in 1823 to be exact,
Hmm,
there was a president of the United States called James Monroe.
yes.
James Monroe made an edict. It's called the Monroe Declaration,
Hmm,
Monroe Doctrine. And what James Monroe said is, listen, you European colonial powers, hands off the Americas.
hmm,
Do not attempt to come and recolonize the Americas,
yes.
and don't try to create difficulties for countries that are now independent in the Americas.
Hmm,
It was in the context of the Monroe Doctrine that Venezuela said to America, help us against these British guys.
hmm,
Venezuela at one point even severed diplomatic relations with the United Kingdom. Called upon the assistance of the United States. The United States even threatened Britain with war over Venezuela.
yes.
And the United States was able to get Britain to agree to an arbitration. Why don't we get some experts, both Venezuelan and British, with a neutral party as the president of the tribunal,
Hmm,
and let these experts determine what the territory of Venezuela is, what the territory of United Kingdom is. Those experts met in Paris between 1895 and 1897.
hmm,
And in 1899, they came to an agreement of what the decision is. They call it an arbitral award.
yes. Yes.
And that arbitral award said, okay, Britain, you're not getting all that you want. Venezuela, you're not getting all that you want. But it turned out that Britain was awarded more than Venezuela.
Yes.
Okay? Venezuela signed the agreement, they accepted the agreement. They even, after 1899, when the arbitral award was announced, they sent teams to do the physical on-the-ground demarcation.
Okay.
They went to 1905 and mapped out. And therefore, there was common agreement that these are the boundaries. That same 1899 arbitral award was the basis for determining the boundaries between Brazil, Venezuela, and Guyana. There's a point in South America where those three countries meet.
Yes.
That point, called the Trijunction Point, was established in 1932. All this time, Venezuela agreed with all this thing.
Yes.
But the world was not static. The world is changing. And part of the changing in the world was the geopolitical dynamics, moving now post-1945, moving now into the Cold War. In the context of this Cold War, there was this country called Cuba. And there is this country called the USSR that has an alignment with Cuba.
Truly.
And in the context of this Cold War, there's a Guyanese guy called Chetty Jagan, who is aligning himself with Cuba, who is communist and upsetting the United States.
Okay.
We're coming now into the late 50s, early 60s. President Kennedy made a visit to Venezuela in 1962. In the context of that visit, there was a conversation between the Venezuelan president and the American president about what's happening in South America, what's happening in the Caribbean, what's happening with these communists.
Okay.
Hear this, Don. It was the United States that planted the notion of, you know what? Maybe you can open this territorial dispute. Maybe you can say that you've got an issue that will delay Guyana becoming independent, preventing this Chetty Jagan guy becoming in rule.
Okay, so it's much more than territory now.
It's much more than territory.
Yes, yes.
And so between 1899 and 1962, the Venezuelans were happy. As a matter of fact, they gave a national award, I think it was called the Order of the Liberator, to one of the lawyers who represented Venezuela in 1899.
Okay.
A guy called Severo Maleprevo. And so 1962 becomes the formal point of Venezuela saying, look, we've got a problem. We raised this problem first at the United Nations. I'll pause there. I think that is a sufficient good historical backdrop to this whole dispute.
Yeah.